And now for a look at Ukraine's rich Jewish heritage, then and now, brought to you by the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter based in Toronto, Ontario. Recently, Jews and Ukrainians alike lost a great advocate for social unity and harmony. On May 26, 2020, distinguished Ukrainian poet and translator Moisei Fishbein died in Kyiv. He was 73. Fishbein was a prominent Ukrainian writer and translator of Jewish origin. He was a member of the Union of Writers of Ukraine and the Ukrainian Pen Club. He was awarded the Order of Prince Yaroslav the Wise and the Vasil Stus Prize for distinguished contributions to culture and for a courageous civic stand. Fishbein was friends with many distinguished Ukrainian cultural figures, as well as prominent Ukrainian Jewish scholars, who recall with great fondness and reverence his extraordinary personality and poetic creativity. Well-known Israeli translator Victor Radutsky, author of a detailed entry about Fishbein in a prominent Jewish encyclopedia, said of him, "There is no poet of his caliber in Ukraine, nor will there be for a long time to come." Moisei Abramovich Fishbein was born in 1946 in Chernivtsi, a city with an unusual mix of cultures, German, Ukrainian, Jewish, Romanian, Polish, and Russian. Its strong, confident, and well-rooted Jewish population goes back centuries. And rather than becoming Russified, the Jews of Chernivtsi became Ukrainianized. This phenomenon had a significant and lasting impact on the future poet's life and philosophy. While his poetry was influenced by the Jewish experience, Fishbein lived with considerable ease in both the Ukrainian and Jewish worlds. He had a natural ability to fuse the two identities and patriotisms. His life's work illustrated his depth of understanding of the tragic events of World War II, the Holocaust, and the Ukrainian fight against tyranny from East and West. While he did not ignore the reality of anti-Semitism in Ukraine, neither did he consider it worse than anywhere else in the world. He preferred to focus on what united the Jewish and Ukrainian people. He was shrewd in spotting outside attempts at creating discord and division between Ukrainians and Jews. Fishbein had a profound respect and deep love for the Ukrainian language and culture. He wrote in Ukrainian, whether he was living in Kyiv or Israel. Ukrainian Jewish author and scholar Yohanan Petrovsky-Stern observed that Fishbein borrowed the concept of the sanctity of the Holy Tongue from Judaic religious tradition, transformed it into the sanctity of the Ukrainian language, and placed it at the gravitational center of his Jewish-Ukrainian symbolism. Fishbein did not consider himself merely a Ukrainian language poet. He said that God made him what he was, a Ukrainian poet, and a Ukrainian poet was what he would always be. He regarded this calling to champion Ukraine a mysterious divine gift. He said, "Ukraine is God-given and God-chosen, and it will survive, for God wants it to survive. I do not know why I, a Jew, was given this knowledge, but I know." As generally happens in the world of art, adversity often births creativity. In Fishbein's case, the difficult conditions of his military service forged his. After being drafted into the Soviet Army, he was sent to Siberia. It was during that grim time that Fishbein began writing poetry. His early works were noted, supported, and promoted by the famous Ukrainian author Mykola Bajan. Fishbein's first publication was a selection of poems that appeared in the Ukrainian literary journal Vitchizna in December of 1970. In 1976, at the age of 30, Moisei Fishbein graduated from the Kiev Pedagogical Institute as a philologist specializing in Ukrainian language and literature. In 1979, to avoid conscription into the KGB, he emigrated to Israel. A few years later, he found work in West Germany. From 1980 to 81, he was a correspondent for a Ukrainian literary journal published in the U.S. and Germany. From 1982 to 1995, he worked at Radio Liberty as a correspondent, commentator, and editor in the Ukrainian service as well as the Russian service. Meanwhile, Fishbein was becoming one of the main figures of contemporary Ukrainian poetry. His articles, interviews, and prose began appearing in Ukraine in 1989. In 1990, the Kyiv-based publishing house Veselka issued a Ukrainian-language collection of his children's poems. Parallel translations into Hebrew were done by Israeli poet and translator Manfred Winkler. In 1996, Fishbein's collection Apocryph was published in Kyiv. It featured poems, translations of poetry, prose, and poems for children. The Ukrainian philosopher and scholar Ivan Zuba called this book marvelous and unique, a publication that will undoubtedly be included in the golden treasury of Ukrainian poetry. In the 1990s, Fishbein became very popular in his hometown of Chernivtsi, which was proud of its contributions to European literature. Petro Rychlo, a translator and scholar of German literature in Chernivtsi, called Fishbein a masterful stylist and a poet of very high rank. In the early 2000s, Fishbein's popularity grew, not least of all because of his almost messianic stance on Ukrainian national revival. He was also noted for his sharp political wit. Ukrainian news agencies often quoted his cleverly worded criticisms of the political regime. In 2004, Fishbein made inroads into a new medium. Members of a popular online journal discussion group competed for the best translation of Fishbein's poetry into Russian and English. Online sources described him in glowing terms. Entries about him appeared in Western encyclopedias. In Ukraine, he was the subject of a Master of Arts thesis. That same year, 2004, presidential candidate Viktor Yushchenko brought Fishbein along on the campaign trail across Ukraine to promote a program of national revival. Professor Wolf Moskovich noted that Moisei Fishbein was a person with a good heart who helped people. He also noted that, many years before the Maidan, Fishbein was a premier political Ukrainian of Jewish background. In 1990, with Fishbein's help, Israel became the first country in the world to accept Ukrainian children affected by the Chernobyl disaster. Moskovitz recalls two personal encounters with Moisei Fishbein. The first time was around 1992-93 in Kharkiv, at a poetry reading at a local Jewish cultural society. At that time, he was astonished to hear this Ukrainian-speaking Jewish poet in Kharkiv, then a Russian-speaking city. The second time was in 2008 or 2009, when he was an Israeli journalist writing about Israeli-Ukrainian bilateral relations. Fishbein sent him a photograph of a handwritten Hebrew prayer for the health and well-being of President Viktor Yushchenko. It had been written in a Kyiv synagogue at Fishbein's special request. Vadim Skurativsky, author of a number of important publications on Jewish issues, noted Fishbein's successful fusion of identities and praised his perfect Ukrainian acoustics. He said, "In the poetry of Moisei Fishbein, Judaism speaks, for the first time in its history, in Ukrainian." Nonetheless, simultaneous membership in these two worlds, the Ukrainian and the Jewish, and a sense of the intertwinement of both these worlds, did not come easily to Moisei Fishbein, nor did they always bring him spiritual peace. In Viktor Radutsky's opinion, Fishbein's poems recreate the drama of the poet's spiritual tension, which combines boundless passion for Ukraine's existence with the genetic code, the memory of the Jew's fate. One of Moisei Fishbein's last poems, written in 2017, references the synthesis of two civilizations. You can read an excellent article about Moisei Fishbein's life and work at the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter website. As well, there's a post from 2008 about Moisei Fishbein on the Nash Holos blog. I'm Pavlina, producer and host of Nash Holos Ukrainian Roots Radio. Until next time, Shalom. Ukrainian Jewish Heritage is brought to you by the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter based in Toronto, Ontario. To find out more about their work, visit their website and follow them on Facebook and Twitter. Transcripts and audio files of this and earlier broadcasts of Ukrainian Jewish Heritage are available at their website, ukrainianjewishencounter.org, as well as at the Nash Holos website, www.nashholos.com.